Here's something no one tells you when you're sitting across from your attorney finalizing your divorce. 18 years of raising a child leads to a moment, a very expensive, very emotionally charged moment, where you and your ex have to make one of the biggest financial decisions of both of your lives together. That moment is college, and if you didn't plan for it inside your divorce agreement, you're walking into it blind. My guest today has spent years sitting in that exact gap between divorced parents who love their kids, disagree on almost everything else, and desperately need someone to help them figure out how to pay for a $300,000 education. Vicki Vollweiler is the founder of College Financial Prep, a certified divorce coach, an MBA, and the author of College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents. She operates as a neutral strategist, helping both parents simultaneously save money and make smarter decisions for their children's futures. I want to have this conversation because I know my audience can relate to the emotional side of divorce inside and out. What they often don't know is what's waiting for them on the other side. And college is one of the biggest landmines no one warned them about. If this podcast helps you, I would be genuinely grateful if you took 60 seconds to subscribe wherever you're listening right now. And if you feel moved to leave a review, please do so. Reviews help real people find the show at the exact moment they need it most. That's not a small thing. That is something life-changing for many. And if you know someone going through divorce who could use this conversation, please send it to them. Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do for someone we love is hand them the right resource at the right time. Welcome to the Conscious Divorce Podcast on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, where we explore divorce not as an ending, but as a transformational opportunity to reclaim your life, reboot your identity, and become the person you are always meant to be. I'm Justin Milrad, certified divorce coach, financial planner, MBA, and founder of Reclaim and Reboot Divorce Coaching, and the author of the U 2.0 Divorce, A Better Way Forward book and workbook. Before we dive in, here's my disclaimer. I'm a certified divorce coach and financial planner, not an attorney, not a therapist, not a financial advisor. Nothing in this podcast constitutes legal, therapeutic, or financial advice. The content here is education grounded in research and professional experience. Always consult a licensed professional for your specific situation. So let's get into today's conversation. Vicki, welcome to the Conscious Divorce Podcast.
Thanks so much, Justin. Glad to be here.
I want to start where most people should start, but don't. Most people in divorce are so focused on getting through it that they completely forget or ignore that college is even coming. Tell me, how did you get here? How does someone build a whole business at the intersection of divorce and college planning?
Wow. So I'm a divorced parent too. I remember at the time my kids were young, and I was thinking about all of the different things I need to consider as I'm going through a divorce. Now, mind you, my father was an attorney. He was a CPA. I kind of have that mindset, and I was thinking about all of the things that needed to be put into place for the divorce, and college planning was definitely one of them. Anyway, as time went on, I became a certified divorce coach, but I was focusing specifically on personal finances with people. And clients were starting to say to me, now, how am I going to save on my child's college education? And it's like, this aha moment. And I was thinking, always about the same thing with my children. I think there has to be something. And going through the process myself and with a couple of friends, like there's definitely strategy that you can employ to make the process not better, but more strategic, more focused on where to save money, how to save money, what paths to take. Definitely strategy, being strategic with the process.
I think, talking about college and mediation, for example, not every state requires it, but in mediation, you can always choose to do it. And I think many parents hope that it'll all work itself out. Well, college isn't cheap. It could be anywhere from, $20,000 to $100,000 per year, sometimes even more. So it's not like not talking about the car or not talking about a prom dress, something where you as divorced parents can probably resolve and afford. This is something that takes incredible planning. And, once you're divorced, and I know this from my own personal experience, we had a college plan. We had, members of our family that, were going to commit to it. But as soon as we got divorced, that all changed. So we didn't plan for the changes. So I'm probably going to be calling you pretty soon, Vicki.
Well, the good news is, with divorce and college planning and, being strategic, picking the right schools, it's possible for it to be a win-win for both parents. Like, we know how much it costs to get divorced. But it is possible. I'm not going to say it happens every single time, but it is certainly possible to plan to be able to save. And, our children can still have wonderful college educations, but it can certainly help both parents. Ideally, save that money for your future retirement. So much was already spent on the divorce. Let's see what we can do for college.
Absolutely. So, let's say you're a parent, and you're listening right now and you have a child from like grade 8 to grade 12. What is the scale of what they're actually, thinking about financially, emotionally? They clearly have to move things forward very quickly because they're really close. What sort of, dollars are they thinking about?
So, 8th grade to 12th grade, wide range. Some people, they don't think about the cost. Unfortunately, they don't think about the cost till after the fact. The child has already applied to schools. They let, the kid drive the bus, so to speak. The child is applying to whatever schools they want to apply to, and then they figure they'll deal with the finances later. And no, we need to flip that model. Where the child applies to school will certainly help with saving money. So certainly in those earlier grades, if you happen to be, going for a tour, stayed away, and there happens to be a college there that you're interested in, go visit the college. See what types of schools your child might be happiest in, and then let's talk about those schools and see if they'll work for your family. Because some schools will and some won't. Being candid.
Can you give us a range of the cost of maybe like an in-state school versus, on the higher end, a private college?
So in-state schools, here I'll talk about, I'm in New York. So right now our in-state schools are just below or around $30,000 a year. If I wanted to go, if my child wanted to go to an out-of-state public university, I figure it's probably going to be, I'll say, in the 50 to 60 range. Some schools, out-of-state public, some, not all, may offer a little bit of merit aid, and that's separate. That's separate from need-based aid, but figure, around 50,000 plus or minus. Private schools, they can run the gamut. I mean, as you mentioned, up to $100,000 a year. The good news for those that have students who are considering applying to Ivy League schools, those schools meet 100% of your need. So if within the formulas, you show that your household has a lot of, a lower income household, you have a lot of need, college, may be paid for.
Which is amazing. And, now we have a better understanding of why our colleges keep asking us for an annual donation. Can you talk about some of the most expensive mistakes that divorced parents make when it comes to college planning, and like some that you see repeatedly?
So there are two main financial aid forms. One is called FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. That's administered by the federal government. The other application is called the CSS Profile, and that's administered by the College Board. That's the same organization that does the SAT exams and AP tests. And with the FAFSA, they're looking at one parent's information. If that parent is remarried, then it's going to be that parent and the step parent. But it's important to, something I'll do with families is determine which parent should be completing the FAFSA form. So it's not both parents. Both parents should not be combining their incomes and putting it on the FAFSA. So that's a huge mistake, because that may cause, any financial aid to go away. CSS profile. So a lot of the schools, not 100%, but a lot of the schools that require the CSS profile will look for both parents' information. So I've had instances where both parents are remarried, and now you're looking, you have to report 4 incomes and four sets of assets for each of those parents. That's the part where it could be a huge mistake in not being strategic in terms of what schools to apply to. I mean, unless both of those parents both happen to have lower incomes, then it could work out. But, depending on your situation, it's important to know what financial aid forms the schools require.
So does it matter? Is it the custodial parent or the non-custodial, parent who fills out the FAFSA, or does it not matter? There are instances. In fact, I have a client right now where one of the parents has, they make $1 million+ a year, and the other one's making $30,000 a year. So they can't split that 50-50 because it's just not equal.
So it's not, it used to be the custodial parent. It's not anymore. So in 2024, there was what was called the FAFSA Simplification Act. They made it anything but simple. I mean, candidly, it was a mess that year. Anyway, so it's not the custodial parent who fills it out. It's not the non-custodial parent who fills it out. It is the parent who provides more financial support for the student. And people ask me what that means all the time. I will work with both parents to structure things so that it's possible that one parent, is providing more of the support for the child than the other.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I remember reading that you saved, one of the case studies, you saved one of your clients over $200,000 on a single college. Can you kind of walk through how that actually happens? And, it sounds like a huge feat. What sort of, scenario and conditions, need to apply to get that sort of outcome?
I mean, I have a couple of scenarios where that's happened. I mean, it's, I'm saying this and I'm being truthful. It's kind of like weight loss. It won't happen for everyone, but depending on the household makeup, is it a one income, are the parents in 2 separate households, or are they married and yet have that shared income together? And what are the incomes of both of those parents? In a case where they're saving almost $250,000, it is the parents are divorced. Neither is remarried. Household income for both, it's on the lower side. We're not poverty level, but on the lower side, I guess. With need-based aid plus some merit aid, they're saving $60,000 a year right now on, a private education at a top university in the country. I've had students. This student, they're saving even more than $250,000. I mean, unfortunate situations, but this is a domestic violence situation now, and they have police reports and all kinds of documentation to support what was happening in regards to their divorce. And now an Ivy League school they're paying them, they're giving them money to go buy books. Everything is totally covered because they can't afford it. But it's possible with all of the right information to be able to accomplish that. And then I have families where they're amicable enough, it's fine. And it just, everybody can get along for college planning because, again, it benefits all of them. And they're also saving about $200,000 a year on the first child. Now I'm working with the second, so still waiting for what that's going to look like. But expecting good things.
Well, that's great news. And, it really makes the services that you offer incredibly valuable, for parents who want to send their kids to school. It's a huge, huge expense. Let's talk about, parents that are going through divorce right now and they're still, negotiating. Let's say they're in mediation, and they want to address divorce in their actual agreement. What sorts of things do they need to think about? And then, do you want flexibility in that, or do you want it to be very, cut and dry? Because I think some people are terrified that they're not going to have the financial capability. They care, they want to participate, but they don't want to commit to, 50-50 in a divorce agreement at this point because they don't know what their financial situation is going to be like.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And very true. And I'll come back to it in a second. But what I always tell, colleagues who are mediators, or people who are going through a divorce, that at bare minimum to include in their agreements is just that both parents are willing to participate in the financial aid process. It's not committing anybody to any set dollar amount, but if one parent refuses even to submit their information to a school that requires it from both parents, the school can turn around and say, well, you're not giving it to us, then we're not giving you any financial aid. And who are you hurting in that? The child.
Okay, sure.
Um, so, bare minimum, everybody should agree to participate. Nobody, you don't have to share information between parents. It's all done independently.
So, as a neutral third party, if you're working with the parents and one refuses to participate, what can you do in that situation? Can you go back to court?
Um, what I do in that situation, this goes back to being strategic again, and I'm going to suggest that we look at different colleges. There are some that will look at one parent, and there are some that will look at both parents. So, it's a matter of applying to the right schools.
Right. So, can you talk a little bit about what the right school actually means for a divorced family and how do you go about building that list?
Well, you need to know what every school requires. Um, Typically, the FAFSA form will be for one household. Again, if remarried, it could be including a step parent. A lot of the schools that require the CSS profile, but not all of the schools, typically will look at both households. So that's key to look at. So, when you're thinking about, Johnny's interested in XYZ school, yeah, it's possible to go on their website and see what financial aid forms they require.
Are there certain schools that tend to be more financially friendly for divorced parents?
Certain schools that are more financially friendly.
Or like a category of school?
No, I can't say that. So much depends on the student and their academic level. And a lot depends on the financials of the family. So there's nothing that I can say, just as a general guideline. It's hard. So in general, if you're looking for merit scholarships, say both parents have very, very healthy incomes, but they're still looking to save some money, they may be looking for merit scholarships. In that case, look at honors programs at schools. Typically, they offer lots of merit scholarships and other great benefits. They offer typically priority housing, priority registration, smaller class sizes, lots of great benefits. But typically, those honors programs will be more at like the safety schools. So, every family's different. They all have different priorities. You have to see what's important to them.
You may have already answered this, but when one parent wants to aim high and the other parent is panicking about cost, how do you navigate that conversation?
Oh, I have that often, candidly. And what what we'll do is, yes, we're going to apply to the school that one parent wants that may be out of the comfort zone, and we're going to project costs beforehand. Make sure it's a good fit, and see if it's worth applying. They may want to just apply to see if they get in, and know that it's a reach and the numbers probably are going to be, too high for both of them. But it is possible to project costs in advance. So that's something I always do with clients as well.
Terrific. Well, we are going to move in a different direction and start talking about co-parenting after our sponsor. So we're going to move to a quick commercial. All right, we're back. So I want to take this into a direction that lives right in the heart of what I do, co-parenting, because college is really the ultimate co-parenting test, right? You can't make this decision unilaterally. You can't exclude the other parent, or you certainly don't want to. And unlike custody arrangements that you can take to court, there's no judge to call when you disagree. So Vicki, can you tell us what a healthy co-parenting relationship around college planning actually looks like?
So this is what I suggest, though I'm a divorced parent myself. I know how difficult it is. Something I always talk about is communication. And in regards to college planning, what I mean by that is if both parents and student are talking about the colleges, I want them to be working towards a similar goal, or at least have the parents kind of discuss it beforehand and bring the student on board. Maybe it's a budget, what they can afford. Maybe it's a type of school that their focus is. Maybe they both went to a certain college when they were, younger, and they want their child to shoot for the same college. Whatever that goal may be, I think it's important to share it with the child. They're all working together. What I've seen happen too often is May 1st is college decision day. Senior year, May 1st, all the students need to commit to whatever college they're going to go to. And what happens, especially when the children are taking the lead and applying to the colleges, then in March, sometimes late March, the colleges will come back to the families and say, okay, this is what the total cost of attendance is going to be. And then the parents start to freak out. And it's not enough time between end of March and May 1st, especially in divorce, for everybody to get on the same page and how are we going to do all of this. And I've seen too often where they have to let the child down and say, no, we can't afford this. And then, the parents are upset, the child is upset. It's much better if they could all work together from the beginning.
Yeah, and obviously this is such a big decision, and it's not really the parents, sole decision. The child and student, has some role in this. They're old enough to have an opinion. They're old enough to drive a car. They're about to go away to college, and they certainly can be affected by the conflict. How do you advise parents, on keeping the child involved to the point that they need to be, where they feel good that they're being, heard and considered, but also to keep them out of the middle of any disagreement, when it comes to, the financial piece or other parts, that one considers when picking a school that one parent might be very passionate about?
I think, from my perspective, the financial education is very, very important, especially if student loans are going to be involved. Like typically the kids, they don't understand what all these thousands of dollars mean. But if there's a school that, one person's leaning towards or the student's leaning towards, but they're going to have to take out a lot of loans, I'll sit down with the family and the student and let's look at what an in-state university costs. Let's look at what the school you're considering costs. What is going to be the impact on student loans in your future? How much you're going to have to pay back? What is that going to do to the student, when they want to move out, when they want to purchase a car, when they, I want there to be financial education around this. So that way everyone can make good decisions together.
Do you also work with the parents in terms of delivering the message, coaching them and maybe role playing with, here's how to deliver the message and here's how to deal with objections and, to make it a smoother process?
So, yeah, I mean, I work with clients nationwide. So whether they're sitting in my office or sitting on Zoom, I'll be with, when it's doable, I'll be with both parents and the student together in a meeting. And yeah, we'll be talking about all of this. And a lot of the times it's me bringing up the discussion because it's too hard for the parents to bring up, but we'll do it all together. So it works.
Awesome. And, when is the right time to start? And, I'm assuming if you have a divorced couple, you should probably start looking sooner than if you were married, because there's more things that you're going to have to address.
Definitely. I'm not saying this is right. Most parents end up waiting to the beginning of 12th grade because the Common App opens August 1st and FAFSA opens October 1st. So they wait till 12th grade. But really, when you're dealing with separation and divorce, I wouldn't let it go later than 11th grade. Right. And certainly, you have to start visiting schools and putting together that list. And I think it's important to start it earlier and certainly start the conversation between the co-parents earlier. You mentioned earlier, like it's not necessarily in a divorce agreement or, it's going to take a lot for both parents to get on the same page. You need to allow enough runway.
Do you ever have to involve other professionals, in the process if you have parents who aren't necessarily agreeing or seeing eye to eye?
I don't typically have to involve other professionals. I mean, there's been like rare instances where it is more of a legal issue and I'll refer them to an attorney if need be, if it's something that, out of my realm. But in general, it doesn't matter if the parents are separated or divorced, and some are divorced for many, many, many years. No, I help them all. And even if the divorce is happening or separation is happening when the students are in college, it's still possible to help them save money. So, don't think once the child is in college, like that's the end of it. No, it's still possible due to the change in situation.
Okay. And, assuming that one of the kids goes to do a master's, does that change anything, in the process?
No, once they're going for a master's, they're with most major, so to speak, most programs at that point, they're considered independent. So the parents' divorce won't matter anymore.
Okay. Fair enough. So you have a book. It's called College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents. Can you tell listeners, number one, where can they find that? And can you also tell them a little more about what they'll find in the book?
Sure. So the book is available on Amazon. It's also available for download on my website at collegefinancialprep.com. In the book, there is a lot of practical guidance. There's a lot of there's some cases to see. So some parents may recognize their own situations through those cases. And there's some, I'll just call it general, a little bit of coaching and motivation in it, just because the process can be so hard for people. And I just want to remind everyone, they're not alone in this. People may not talk about it, but anybody who's divorced understands, that there's this extra layer of complexity that we're all dealing with. So it's to help people, learn how to navigate it and make sure that they know that they're not alone.
Great. Well, I look forward to reading the book myself. So next we're going to move to, my rapid fire section of the podcast where I'll just give you a bunch of questions in rapid fire mode, and if you don't mind answering them. So the first question, it's more of a statement. if I make good money, there's no point in applying for financial aid.
Not true at all. Some schools may want to see that you're looking for money before they even award merit scholarships. Always apply for financial aid. And if you want your child to even take out we didn't even talk about this, but freshman year, the students can take out up to $5,500 in student loans. If you want your child to take out a loan and you earn $1 million, you still have to fill out FAFSA for the student to be able to take out a loan.
Okay. Whoever has higher custody percentages should file for the FAFSA because they get more aid. True or false?
Not necessarily.
Okay. The school my kid loves has a sticker price of $80,000 a year. There's no way we can make it work.
So I don't have a quick answer to this other than a story to share. I recently had a client, same situation, literally $80,000 a year, and they wanted to discuss taking out a HELOC or taking out student loans or what to do. And in reviewing their finances, we found the money. They don't need the loans or the HELOC. So you have to know your own situation.
Once a financial aid offer is made, that's final. You can't negotiate.
Not true. Everything is negotiable. Schools are businesses.
Okay. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So Harvard will likely not negotiate. Some public schools, public state schools, they don't really negotiate so much. Private schools, yeah, they may be open to negotiating. They're businesses. They want to fill seats. So depending on maybe other offers you have, the schools may, try to win you over and get you to come to their school. It doesn't hurt to ask. The answer is always no if you don't ask.
Okay, that's great. My ex remarried someone wealthy. That income will count against my child on financial aid.
It's possible, but it depends on where the child is applying to school, which financial aid forms are needed, and who's filling out FAFSA.
Okay. And I'm guessing it also matters where you live, right? Because there are different state rules.
Different state rules. Different states may offer state-based scholarships that may have, different income cutoffs. So, again, I'll talk about New York. New York has the Excelsior Scholarship for households that earn less than $125,000 a year. So, yeah, if that parent who earned less all of a sudden remarries, yeah, it's possible that it will impact aid.
Okay. So here's an actual deep question. So I know when it comes to mortgages, especially if one parent wasn't necessarily working and they go to the table in mediation, how you choose to classify certain payments matter. So, instead of getting a lump sum payment, which is awesome for a lot of people, when it comes to qualifying for a mortgage, you're better off getting a payment over X number of years on a monthly basis because that's more recurring income. Is there a way that you would advise people when they're in mediation, where there's some sort of potential alimony to structure their payments?
This is going to go back to who's filing FAFSA and which parent provides more financial support for the student. So, yes, it's possible to try to figure it out. And I guess it depends also on how many years away you are from college. I hate to say it depends, but there's so many variables in this. But yes, it's possible to say, let's put more towards spousal support, and move some numbers around.
Yeah. So, I think your point is every case is a little different.
Yes.
And it matters. And you have to look at the global solution, knowing that this is one of the potential, outcomes and something that you need to consider.
Right. You could have two sets of divorcing parents with similar financials, but the students may be widely different, and that will certainly impact the picture of what colleges they're applying to and how it all figures in. So, yeah, I hate to say a lot of that it always depends, but yeah, there are a lot of variables that go into this.
Okay. Can you tell us more about what your process is? So from the moment someone, hires you and sets up an engagement, what is the time commitment from, starting with you to actually starting to apply, to making final decisions? What does that typically look like?
So, typically what I've done is just a 1 hour session. The 1 hour session, I I tell the parents I'm going to ask for financial information from mom. I'm going to ask for financial information from dad. They are each going to send it to me separately. I am not
Mhm.
sharing anything with anybody. Um, but yeah, we're gonna, everything remains confidential, and we're gonna talk it all through. In what I mean, I'm not talking about the specific finances, but I want to be able to see it so I can create that plan for them and get them on a path to help them save money. Um, what I'm doing now, I just launched a divorce and college planning 3-week session. Um, so that way it's kind of follow the book. It's going to give parents that overall education, about the college planning process. So that way, it will help them start the path towards saving money.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
if people want to meet for just a 1 hour session, I'm not going to lock them into a package. I do offer packages and help people and offer more support. It is available, but it's not required.
Okay. I'm actually looking forward to taking your mini course.
Well, I'm looking
Um,
forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
so before I let you go, can you tell the audience where they can find you, work with you, and some of the things you offer?
Sure. So you can find me at collegefinancialprep.com. Um, certainly check out the free resources that we offer, and that's being shared today. I have a free divorce and college planning strategic timeline that's available to everyone. Also on the website, I mentioned you can download our book. Divorce and college planning. Wait a sec, college planning for divorced and widowed parents. And then is the group program that we're launching, and you could find out information about working with us one-on-one, and how we can help you.
Fantastic. And I want to name something for our audience. What Vicky does sits directly in a space I care about most on the show, which is the long game. We always have to think about the long game. Getting through divorce is one thing, but building an intelligent, deliberate life on the other side is another one. And remember, college isn't just a big bill, it's an investment in your kids. It's a major life decision that you and your co parent are making together, possibly for the first time in years. So getting it right matters. Get it right for your kid, and getting it wrong is expensive in every sense of the word. So Vicky, thank you so much for your time. This was a really powerful and important conversation, and I think every divorced parent needs to think about this and hear it.
Thanks, Justin. So glad to be here today.
So everyone, thank you for spending time with us today. If today's conversation gave you even one insight that changes how you approach college planning for your child, pass it on. Share this episode with a co-parent, a friend who's going through it, or someone in your divorce support group. That's how we build something meaningful here, one conversation at a time. And if you want to go deeper on the transformational side of divorce, the identity piece, the rebuilding, what comes after, my book is available on Amazon, U 2.0, Divorce a Better Way Forward, and the U 2.0 workbook. Both will meet you where you are to take you further than you ever thought you can go. Visit me at reclaimandreboot.me. And if you're ready to talk, like really talk one-on-one, I offer a free 30-minute consultation, no obligation, completely confidential. The link will be in the show notes. And to Vicky, thank you so much for what you do. It's so important. And to everyone listening, divorce doesn't have to be the thing that defines you. It can be the thing that refines you. I'm Justin Milrad, and until next time, see you later.